So today I thought we could talk a bit about the modern defense. Have you ever heard
Ooh.
of it, and do you play it? Do you like it?
Well, it's my go-to bullet opening, to be
Hmm.
honest, because it is so dirty tricky and people fall for it so often because yeah, it's quite interesting. So if we're talking about modern defense, now maybe I am confusing something, but I think it is e4, e5. Oh, yeah, I am confusing something
No,
now.
it's
So I'm
E4
not
G6.
Yeah, I'm not playing this as a bullet opening at
It
all. I
would
never played
it would be a
fianchettos.
fine bullet opening too
Totally.
because it's the same it's a similar setup every time, no matter what white plays. So in that
Exactly.
sense, it would be nice. So um, it's um, it's similar. Sorry, it's similar to the King's Indian in some ways in
Hmm.
the pawn setup. And I've played it a lot in in Blitz and in classical games too. Um, but it's one of those openings that gives up a lot of space from the start, and
Yeah.
then you try to attack it and try to make it tricky and win some of that and make that turns the space advantage into some weaknesses for the opponent.
Hmm.
So
I think Hikaru Nakamura is playing this quite often, and my little brother too, who just started playing
the
chess.
two top
Yeah,
chess players.
exactly. So yeah,
Well,
this it is so
yeah.
weird because it goes against everything you learn in the very beginning to take care of the middle. But that's why it's probably called modern opening, because it is a quite modern opening. Yeah.
Exactly.
So what's
So
the
the reason why I
purpose?
wanted to show it is because I found a game that was really nice and
Hmm.
that had tactics like I've never seen before,
Okay.
and it's Sokolov against Killer Person Tiger. Have you ever seen that game, or did that sound familiar?
No, but of course, Ivan Sokolov, I had a lot of talks with him very recently. So yeah,
Mhm.
and he's doing those super amazing Fritz trainers. Like there, people are going crazy for them because he's just like this really masterful coach.
I mean,
Obviously,
he taught the Uzbekistan team at the Olympiad,
Olympic
right?
gold, exactly. Yeah, yeah. But he's just like he's explaining things so well, and he has so much knowledge. It's yeah, it's just very thrilling to listen to him. Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, unfortunately, here he was
He
playing with the white
lost.
pieces, so it's against what I'm showing. But of course, like he's an amazing player, and he has plenty of games where he was on the side of brilliant tactics. Um,
Absolutely.
so so this is how the modern starts. Is you push the G6 pawn and then the D6 pawn.
Mhm.
There's also a different way to play it. Some people like to play it like this, so
Seen
with the
that,
pawn
yeah.
structure a bit differently. But I mean, I don't really like this way of playing it because I find that it's just like the Caro-Kann.
Yeah.
So to me, it kills the purpose because I don't play the Caro-Kann. But if somebody does, then maybe you could alternate these two and have
Hmm.
it similar. So instead, I like to play it like this so that it's more similar to my favorite games in.
Yes.
And here, Black plays A6. So
Wow. Three pawn moves on the sixth row. It's funny.
yeah, so what do you think are the ideas for the white and for the black sides?
I always love that you are asking this question, Svetlana, because this is like it's so purposeful to think about it yourself, and you do this quite often when we're having the openings. And
Hmm.
I don't, of course, I don't know because I don't play those openings. So let's
Yeah, I
try
try
to
to do
figure it
it right
out.
outside of the opening
Yeah,
so that you don't just memorize the moves or once you see the moves they make sense, but it's good to test yourself right away if you would actually
certainly.
think of the same plans.
Well, I guess black will try to develop the knight to f6 castle, maybe push the pawn on e5 forward, maybe on c5, maybe even on d5, which is going into Sicilian dragon territory at one point, maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of familiar openings which this is going into the modern opening.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it's just a different order of piece movements.
Yeah.
And then it will try to stop the white pieces to advance to b5. Maybe there's even b5 and bishop to b7.
Yeah,
like
this one I like.
the hedgehog, I think, is it? Or
Yeah.
hippopotamus or something? Some animal. Like, since we're at Tiger Hilla person, there's loads of animals in this game here anyway.
Yeah. So
Uh,
b5 is good. Bishop b7 is good. C5 is also one of the typical plans that you usually play after the knight comes here to d7, and then you try to push for a c5.
oh,
So
okay.
that's the correct plans. But the interesting thing that you've mentioned is that this knight here. I like to delay its development because if we look at some of White's next few moves, so knight d7 and h4, and here it's of course very tempting to go knight f6 because it's a very typical developing move, and you kind of want to castle. But if White chooses this type of attacking setup, which you don't know yet, so that's why I didn't want to castle too early, because if we do that now, then if we start castling here, then there's always going to be some h5 ideas, which I really don't like for to play as the black side. It's there's some big threats, and g4 comes next, and it's just castling a little bit too early into exactly what White wanted. So once White chooses the setup, this is one of the most dangerous ones in my opinion, and it's the computer loves it, and it's also the most popular one.
Oh, this is so interesting. The computer loves it because the computer is like, yeah, I know what to play. You have to play like 5, 6, 7 rows moves perfect, and then it's a good opening. But this is where it gets troublesome if you just trust the engine in those openings and go like, okay, that's the best move. Okay.
I mean, the computer loves always these hypermodern openings because they see that that there's extra space, and it's really and it will always give an advantage to an opening to the side that has extra space. The same thing in the King's Indian. You pretty much never equalize unless somebody makes a little mistake. So according to the computer, it will always be slightly better for White. But this is also one of the most dangerous weapons, just to play even psychologically, and to just know that you probably shouldn't castle just yet. And there's 3 options of defense here. The knight f6, which wasn't probably my favorite, because it will allow, because we are not going to castle yet, plus it allows some bishop h6.
Always tempting.
So I like to keep the knight there. It's not everybody's approach, but I just like it because it doesn't let White do what they want just yet. And there's h6, which is also a good option, so that on any h5 you get to play g5 at some point. And the other option is to play h5, which is what happened in the game, to just block it completely.
Probably also as far as I understand, one of the most modern responses.
Yeah. So both of the players have some weaknesses, which is why the knight is coming here to g5. And the next couple of moves were developing moves. Black played c6 here. So they didn't play b4 because there was a really interesting tactic with bishop c4. So just an extra developing move, and now the knight can come back to a good place and just keep attacking here.
That's clever. Okay.
So that's what could have happened. And I'll try to go through the game a bit quicker because it's a really complicated game. And we will have a lot of tactics to solve.
Sure.
So now White plays f4. So this is a very common situation in the modern, right? White got more space, but Black gets counterattacking chances and squares that they can go to. So it was better probably to not to overextend that much. So as White, you need to be patient and to build up your advantage. But it's not always easy, and there's always some counterattacking chances for the opponent. So how do you think we take advantage of the overextension?
That's a great question, isn't it?
It's not
So
always going to be a tactic when I ask.
sure, but how about we get our knight to f6 now and then jump to g4?
So that was the trick, and you fell for my trick. So knight f6 was the
Oh
move to
no!
not play because of e5.
Oh no!
And now if you go to g4, there is e6, which is not pleasant.
Not at all.
So,
Oh
so
no!
you could have gone for the same idea, but with a sneakier move, knight to h6.
That is nice.
So preventing just preventing the opponent's e5 idea. So now e5 wouldn't really come with a tempo, so it's not that dangerous. We could even castle, and after e6, go f6. Which looks strange, but it works out. You know, we at least
Sure.
protect our f7 square, and then we win back the pawn.
Yeah. Definitely safer than the other variation.
The other one looked very dangerous. Yeah. So
Sus.
knight to g4 is a threat. So bishop e2. Now the knight goes to f6. So now we're fine to play. Now we're fine against e5 because there's no longer a knight on d7 that's attacked. So we can play f6 and
yeah,
it's okay.
Okay.
So white played bishop f3. The knight went to g4 where we intended it. And the next move is very interesting. So to me, it looked a bit positionally strange, but it turns out to be very deep.
Okay.
So try to find the breakthrough that black went for.
For you at home, same. Try to find the breakthrough. Well, so many options, goodness. Okay, so, well, of course, our knight. Yeah, I see a couple of ideas. So, one thing I noticed right just now is that the queen is looking to h2. Maybe we can take this to our advantage. Svitlana is not impressed at all. She just
it's just there's so many pieces in the way.
Yeah, okay. Good. Let's forget about that. How about we how about that's not working. That's not working.
As I said, it's a positionally strange move, but it's
Okay.
one of the breakthroughs in the center. So there's
how
only
about we take on e3 and then we get our second knight to g4. If the bishop would take back and we take back, we have this beautiful power on h4. Svitlana's still not impressed.
No, I mean it's okay because the knight trade for a bishop is probably advantageous, but that wasn't it. No, and they don't have to take the knight either. They could go back like queen e2
yes, of course. And the the queen goes back. Okay, yeah.
Or even if they take, I'm not sure if there's anything amazing on h4 because they can just protect it. But yeah, but still, it's that would actually make sense positionally. What the move in the game looked a little strange to me, but
okay,
it's one of the pawn breakthroughs.
I see. So then, I mean, how it cannot be f. Well, which of the three pawns? 4 pawns. Gosh. What is the breakthrough here? So what happened? Okay, well, we have to do this, right? Why am I always trying to avoid this? So what happens after e5?
Oh, e5 was also not it, but it's okay. E5, I guess they'll just take or play. I'm trying to calculate something like f5. I'm really worried about the king. That's why.
Yes, that is yes.
Okay. What about? Okay. I think this might be something on f7 that I'm a bit worried. So e5, it has to really work out tactically for it to be good.
Okay. Okay. So what
next
about? F5.
You went you went the other way. F5, I think they're gonna play E5.
Okay, so it is D5 in the end, isn't it?
Yep, it is D5. To me, it looks strange. I don't know about you.
Two cock.
It
I would
just
have.
looks bad for this bishop. That's why
Yes.
I didn't seem to like it. But it has a really deep idea, and
Okay, now I'm curious.
it's that we actually are not even going to take back that pawn, but instead we did it to occupy these squares with our knights.
That's so cool. Okay. What?
So
Oh,
the bishop
that
is
is
under
rough.
rough for who?
Well, dude, this is quite cool.
I agree.
Say it
I
like
really
that.
like this pawn break, and it's something that I wouldn't have expected. So now, of course, if we just try to take it back, then Black would have a lot of problems, which is why the whole idea was to get compensation for it and to get piece activity for it, for that pawn.
Sure. Yeah.
Not convinced just
No, I was
yet.
just calculating what happens if we take the bishop and then take on d4, but the queen will take the knight back on f2, and then the rook will just
Yeah,
swap the two pieces and white has an advantage. So that was just my
exactly.
little calculation in the back of my head.
No, that was a good one. So White plays d takes c6, and the next move, to me, it was really shocking, but it starts super interesting tactics. So I mean, the best move was probably to just capture,
Yeah.
and everything would have been fine for Black. Even maybe they can fight for an advantage because of the piece activity. So this was the best way, but Black found a way to start an attack and to make it super complicated. So what else do you think Black has tried here?
Yeah, I see so many options. So, what to do first? First, we can take on d4 somehow. We can even go to e3 to block the queen from f4, go with our queen to f4.
Oh, you keep trying to make the checkmate on h2.
Yeah, I so want it. So d4 looks the most vulnerable to me.
Right.
So what happens if we just take on d4? Yeah, with the rook, exactly.
Exactly.
I really
With the
wanted
rook,
to say that.
that's what he played. That's what he played. And the point is that if the bishop captures, then bishop d4, and if they go there, then there's knight g3 checkmate, which is
Oh.
a really nice checkmate, right? With the two knights and the bishop.
God.
So the rook was not was untouchable there. You couldn't have captured it. Well, anything else, if white played passively, then it also doesn't work because we can actually just recapture the pawn and be up a pawn. Well, we're not up a pawn actually, but f4 is hanging and the pieces are too active, I think. So no pawn, but good position. But Sokolov found a really good counterattack. He played knight to d5. So this is where the tactics start. And to me, this was a really crazy game. And even seeing the moves myself when I was looking at it, it's impossible to see all of the tactics. I don't know how they did it under limited time and under the pressure of the not having an engine, all of that. I don't know how they did it, but it's a really amazing game. So queen to c6 was the only move. We had to eliminate this pawn at some point. And now after queen a5, this was, I think, the toughest moment because there's only a couple of moves that save Black's life. Wow. Because white is threatening knight c7. So it's probably impossible to see everything from the start. So maybe I'll tell you the next move, but then we'll find some of the variations.
Okay.
So the two moves that save Black are queen to d6 and queen to d7. And just to demonstrate why everything else doesn't work. So for example, if queen c2, then knight c7, and here there's a really nice checkmate in 4 that you can try to find.
Knight e6 check.
Yeah. Even is it
Oh,
even
queen
D3?
d8 check.
Yeah, it's in 3. We didn't even need 4 moves, I
Yeah.
think. So yeah, this is the checkmate. So that's just to say that black was in danger if they did something reckless. And he played queen to d6, which was really nice. So still, white can go for this, but it's not quite the same. And they had to find this crazy move to equalize. They had to have found knight b5.
Oh.
And that's the only thing that equalizes to win back the piece and to somehow get here, and ends up being equal material. So both of the players would have had to find these like only moves to get the material back to equality and to not miss some tactic, which is why I think that this game was just completely crazy.
Yeah,
and
bonkers.
Yeah, so instead, it completely makes sense why white didn't want to go for this. Once again, bishop d4 is never a problem because you will always get to capture back with the bishop, and everything is fine, so you don't lose any material there. And if you're worried about the bishop on e2, on d7, then there's always knight e2 with not even a repetition, but actually just mate.
It's just mate, yes.
Yeah. So instead, I'm sorry, there's so many variations, but I thought the game was fascinating.
Well, you can, of course, you at home, you can always check it out in the ChessBase article, which I really highly recommend doing it. Put it in your Svitlana folder and check out all the variations and calculate a little bit for yourself.
Yeah. So knight to e4 is what actually happened, and it led to an even more interesting continuation.
Oh my god.
Because we are going to have an imbalance. So the queen took the knight.
Check on f6.
Exactly. And this leads to a series of tactics and only moves that must be made by both of them to keep up the equality, as it usually goes. So once we see this, so it's 2 pieces for the queen. If we capture back, it's also going to be 3 pieces, which is enough for a queen, but I'm always scared to go for these. Even though I did my Fritz trainer on imbalances, but to me that's the scariest imbalance.
Yes, is it? So what would be the complete composition? It was b4.
It would be 3 pieces for a queen. So 3 pieces, minor pieces for a queen. To me that's scary because I would be scared to be on the side with the pieces because the opponent has a queen and can probably attack me better. But I would also be worried if I had the queen, because 3 pieces is a lot, and if they coordinate well, then they could also attack you.
Now I get what you mean. So it's because it's just also, it is just very bonkers. It's true, yeah. Haven't thought about it. And it actually happens so much more often than you would think it does. I had it a couple of times in my blitz games, and I always was like, I think like the minor pieces have a bit more action. But yeah, the queen can give checks, and out of a sudden, 5 moves later, one of the minor pieces is down.
Yeah, maybe not even about the checks, but the queen can just take all of your pawns somewhere on one of the sides.
That as well, yes. Yeah.
So it's both of them are scary to play with. So yeah, but if you are open to these sacrifices, and if you actually calculate these in your games, then they can happen. But you can also just avoid them too, because it's to me that's the scariest one. So here black had to play this first so that there's no bishop to d4. So at this point we cannot keep this rook here any longer, because then there would have been no checkmate.
My gosh, yeah. I even thought of rook a4, but yeah, there's just so much. Wow.
Here there's no longer a checkmate after this nice move queen to d2.
Oh.
So white would have won this. So this is why you couldn't have just recaptured calmly.
Sure.
And you just had to make a precautionary move to just take on b2. Now, white played bishop b7. There's so many captures to calculate, so it's impossible once again. But finally, in the end, we get to a position where there's 2 knights and a rook for a queen. So technically, black should have the advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, so far, this rook is not participating, and the king is a bit in danger. So it wasn't that easy. And I want you to try to find what we're going to do after a takes b5.
Oof, that's such an evil move.
Yeah.
So it's too scary to leave this piece alive, I would say. So, but then, of course, if we take, the queen goes to a8.
Mm-hmm.
And that just doesn't look good.
Exactly. So this would not really be great because
Queen a7. Okay.
It doesn't.
Okay.
I also at first I also thought the rook was hanging, but no, it's not. And the problem is the king.
Yeah.
There's c3 before queen d7, so there's always once the king is on d6, it's already a dangerous zone. So instead, it's what I've mentioned before, with the rook being out of play and with the king being in danger.
So what to do here? Okay, so we have to... Wow, what the heck? How to stop this?
We can still castle. It's still legal.
We can still castle.
Yeah.
Well, how about we castle then? I think that's a
exactly.
good move. My gosh, I really didn't have this on my radar at all.
No, me neither. It's so difficult because you just see this pawn and you think that it's going to make it, but there's this option.
Okay.
To stop it that way.
And that works.
Somehow it does, yes. So you win. You would win back one of the queens, and you always end up being up a bit of material.
My goodness. Okay.
So white went c3.
Mm-hmm.
And the players just continued to be fancy, making fancy sacrifices. I think it was not necessarily necessary. You could just move the rook and, be a normal person. But he decided to play knight to e3.
Oh, come on.
So the goal is that if they take, you would take back like this, and once again have all of these mating threats come back.
Yeah, and not even that. I think there's also just like so many. I mean, the queen is gone if the queen doesn't move.
That too. And knight g4, knight g3 is always a checkmate threat. So it's all of that together. And so this was the idea with knight e3, which once again is just I think once they got into the mood of calculating these crazy tactics, then nothing was too crazy for them at this point. So they just kept making these moves. So this pawn, the pawn that we've been worried about for so long, it actually captures, and it ends up on a6.
What kind of game is this?
I'm telling you, when I saw it, I thought I should show it, but it's impossible to calculate these tactics from the very start and to try to guess the move. I think this is the best, the most humbling game where you try to when you can try to play guess the move, and then you'll guess none of them right. It's a good practice actually to try to guess the moves in top player games.
Oh, okay.
But this one is not is probably not the one that you would pick to get the most points and to feel good about yourself.
Yeah, I just already fell for it again. I thought, why doesn't the rook go to d2 and threaten checkmate on g2? But there is a bishop on the other side of the board which protects it, and you cannot get rid of this one.
No, but rook d2 is actually still fine. That's a good idea. He played rook d7 to maybe to do this trick. I think to do this trick for white to play a7, which they didn't play. But I think maybe this was one of their ideas, is that he wanted to tempt white to promote.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly enough, so I looked at this position and I was like, okay, 2 queens. But then if you turn on the engine, then black is clearly winning. Not even better, not nothing. Winning. And it's actually just because there's gonna be mate.
Oh,
So let's just see a bit of why. So you gain back the material once again. Never, like I've never seen 2 queens in such a material imbalance.
Yes.
And then the 2 rooks are actually stronger than the 2 queens because there's also other pieces that join the attack. And well, soon enough that you're gonna have to give back one of your queens.
Crazy.
So a7 wasn't working, so maybe that was the idea. So eventually the rook did come to d2 as we wanted. Rook to b1, the bishop joined. So I'm already, it's the mate is coming very soon.
Yeah, it looks. This is a fascinating game.
I agree, but it's impossible to guess it.
Oh, does the king go up to g7 and the rook goes to h8?
Exactly. So
Oof.
they played c4, and king g7, gets nice exclamation mark for the idea of rook h8 next, and that's how it ended. And white resigned because rook h8 is unavoidable mate. But it was probably one of the craziest tactics I've seen, and this the material imbalance and that sometimes even the 2 queens couldn't hold the position, and you can allow the promotion of the queen just like that if the attack is strong enough. But all of that is to say that the modern can be a very dangerous opening, and that you can always get these counter-attacking chances despite having lack of space. So if you are interested in crazy tactics, then it could be an opening to try.
Thank you so much, Svitlana. This was really enjoyable. Hope you at home had the same experience, and we see each other soon again. Bye-bye.